But one, it has shaped my work as a man. It is critical that as a man that I step up and fight rape culture, that I challenge other men about who and what we are and how we define manhood, which is really critical for me. But the great part about my story is that I was in a hospital for a month. I was in foster care for another month. And a woman named Marilyn Anderson Chase, a young social worker, she introduced me to my parents because I was adopted at the age of 2 months. My father, Herb Akuzulu Jackson, who fought very hard to make sure that women, people of color, and Boston residents had an opportunity on construction sites. He's an entrepreneur, started many companies, and my mom, Rosa Jackson, had a daycare for 25 years. And they adopted 4 of us. I was the first to be adopted, and I have 4 older siblings that are biological. So there's 8 of us. And so that's, to me...
What a wonderful big family.
It's great, but the great part, Rachel, was we all lived in a house.
Sure. Right?
So this is something different than today. We had a driveway, we had a backyard. I had to learn how to drive. I learned how to drive and ride my bike in the driveway. So I don't turn well, I go really, But when it comes down to it, people could afford to live in the city of Boston, and a family could afford to live in the city of Boston. And the city of Boston that we live in today, this administration is turning its back on families. The housing that's being built is not being built for the people who currently live in the city of Boston. Housing prices, you're seeing transactions of, on average, $6.99.
It's terrible.
Rents.
It really is. Well, you know what's interesting for me is because we often talk about diversity. And I do think diversity is important, but it shouldn't stop at racial and ethnic and religious.
Yeah.
We have to have economic diversity too. I think that the health of a city is measured by that particular type of diversity.
Yep.
We have to have a healthy and vibrant middle class. What would you say to that?
So I would say also the health of the city is based on mobility. Can you move from the level that you started at, right?
That's another good point.
And so what I would say is, one, in a Jackson administration, in the first 30 days, I will file legislation to have a $15 an hour minimum wage. People in the city of Boston you can't stay here for $11 an hour. It's almost impossible. So that's one of the things that we will do. So understand, Boston has one of the largest income inequality gaps. So the Federal Reserve Bank, Boston Federal Reserve Bank, came up with a study. It's called The Color of Wealth. And it looks at the median net worth. So that's how much you own minus how much you owe of families. A white family in Boston has a median net worth of $247,500. The median net worth of a U.S.-born black family is $8. 8. And so that's the city that we live in. And in my district, I have from Back Bay currently to Roxbury.
And so, as I said at the top of the show, I mean, most people know that you are the District 7 counselor on the Boston City Council. But for viewers who might not know, and of course, people can access this interview online.
That's awesome.
So people all over the place can check us out. So just, for those people, to let them know, you have a very diverse, just speaking of diversity, you have, what is it? You have all of Roxbury, you have parts of Dorchester, you have parts of the South End, and you have parts of Fenway. And so
a little bit of Mission Hill.
And we can't leave out Mission Hill. And it's so funny because I always think of Mission Hill as Roxbury, even though it's technically...
Well, no. Mission Hill is Roxbury. So all of the old maps, it is still part, and it's built on solid ground.
Well, I mean, but I know some people, they're like, okay, no, it's Mission Hill. And I said, yeah, but I think of it as, Roxbury. What I want to do, though, is I want to talk about how your district is really you have all kinds of different people from all walks of life, all different levels of education and income. And so while we don't have nearly as much diversity in terms of income as we need to, we still see a little bit of it, and certainly that's in your district.
Definitely.
But let's go to our first break, and then when we come back, we're going to explore diversity in all of its kind of dimensions, aspects.
Definitely. I always knew that I had a calling to serve people. I was adopted. My mom had a daycare for 25 years in this house. So there are hundreds of young people who she started on the right foot with education, love, and guidance. There was this mentality of grace, and I got to see what purpose and love for community look like. I'm doing the work of my father and my mom.
Tito's agenda. So please welcome us joining Tito Jackson, City Councilor.
Thank you so much. I'm a Boston City Councilor, and I represent about 72,000 people. My district is from Back Bay to Roxbury, and there's a 33-year difference in life expectancy and 2 miles. 50% of families in Boston make $35,000 a year. 50% of the people. And there are neighborhoods that are experiencing huge uptick in violence. We're allowing people in our country to dismantle what our country is about. I am running for mayor of the city of Boston for all of the dreams of young people, for opportunities for kids like me who are adopted. I will ensure that our government is run with integrity, a city that promotes and protects people living with dignity, and that invests in education for all students. The city of Boston is a city of compassion, and we must work together if we are to succeed.
Kids will spend 15 minutes watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
Hello and welcome back to Bostonian Rap. Again, my name is Rachel Meiselman, and I am absolutely delighted to have as a very special guest mayoral candidate Tito Jackson. Now, as many of you know, he's currently holding the District 7 seat on the Boston City Council. Now, before we went to break, we started to unpack the idea about diversity, because as we were saying, Tito and I, most people think of racial and ethnic diversity, but we need to start having a serious conversation about economic diversity. And you certainly see all those different types of diversity in the district that Mr. Jackson currently represents.
And so, you know, when we look at the economic components, so when we, 50% of people in Boston make $35,000 or less.
And that's just
50% of people. In Roxbury alone, 75% of people make $50,000 or less. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because 87% of the housing is being built for people in the top 25%.
Sure.
And so that becomes problematic. And in this administration that is currently in office, they continue policies that are going to displace the people who currently live in the city of Boston. And this also translates into life and death. If you live in Back Bay, which is a slither of that in my district, versus Roxbury, people in Back Bay.
Difference in life expectancy.
Yeah, 91.9 is your life expectancy in Back Bay. 58.9 is your life expectancy in Roxbury. 33-year difference, 2 miles apart, but a whole lifetime away. And 58.9 is actually lower than the life expectancy of Iraq, of Cambodia, and Gambia. So that's in our city and our time,
disturbing.
and it's why I run, because these disparities are so persistent and they're widening because we are not giving economic opportunity to people in our city. People are working hard. People are working 2 and 3 jobs, and they can barely keep up with what's happening in the city.
Now let's talk about that. There are several things I kind of want to pull out of what you just said. Mm-hmm. First of all, I mean, there are some efforts to build what is called affordable housing, although I really hate that term. I prefer the term accessible housing myself, because I feel like that starts to look at the problem holistically, because it's not just having a place that you can afford, it's also having an income that allows you to have
both levers there.
Right, exactly. But I find that even if there is affordable housing built, to use the term that others stubbornly continue to use, like you said, people can't advance. And that's really, that's disturbing to me. That's the word that I would use, because I feel like if people work hard, and Bostonians are such hard-working people, if people work hard, then they should have something to show for that. I mean, you know, if you're going to work hard, you know, you don't do it just to occupy your time. You want to have money to maybe put away. You maybe want to put away money for your children. You maybe want to buy a summer home. But like you said, now let's pull out the part where you talked about 2 and 3 jobs. That's aberrant to me, that people work 2 and 3 jobs not to get ahead, but just for the privilege, because it has become a privilege, to keep their heads above water.
So what I would simply say is this. You're absolutely right. So it is my goal to work with organizations like the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization to ensure that we build at least 1,000 units of affordable home ownership. And we also will be redefining what affordable means. So affordable, I like to say, affordable is like that word love, kind of means different things to different people, right? And so it is defined differently. And so affordable currently in Boston doesn't even meet the criteria of most of the people. So affordable in Boston is currently generally defined as 70% of the area median income. And let's translate what that means. That means $70,000 to $120,000 of income. We just had the conversation that said 50% of people make $35,000 or less. So the affordable units that we're building actually, in some ways, displace people, because if you make $35,000, you can't afford the $70,000 unit. So that's a critical component, and we should define affordability based on the median income of that particular neighborhood.
Absolutely.
We should also increase the requirements of affordable housing. But before we do that, let's pull back. We need a democratic planning agency. We have the BRA. It's now called the BPDA. They changed the name for $600,000. They changed the name. In my administration, we would blow up that organization. We would get rid of that organization because it is undemocratic. It doesn't answer to the people of the city of Boston. It's unaccountable, and it's not transparent. So it is critical that we get rid of that agency. Urban renewal has been the removal of many people in our community, and I voted against the extension of urban renewal. And I would create a brand new agency that is people-focused, not development-focused. If we focus on people, the conditions of people in the city of Boston, then we can keep people in the city. Right now, when we look at $25 million check that this administration, the Walsh administration, wrote to General Electric. And in addition, they got another $150 million from the state. That's tax dollars that are going to a for-profit company. And by the way, that's our money. And so at the same time that cuts are happening in schools, Mattahunt School was closed this past year.
My middle school, the R.G. Shaw School.
Oh, the Shaw, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, well,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a proud graduate of the R.G. Shaw School. Gone.
Right.
Gone.
The Shaw. $11 million was cut out of this year's budget, and 49 public schools were cut. This is happening at the same time that $25 million of your money is going to a for-profit company called General Electric. Because they bring good things to life, but when it comes down to it, they don't
bring Bostonians to life.
In addition, they don't give them to you for free. So what we need to make sure that we're doing is investing in our public school system, and I know we'll get there, but that this housing component is critical because 4,000 students in the Boston public schools are homeless. Out of the 58,000 students that we have, 4,000 of them are homeless. When I started as chair of education in 2014,
right, because
there were 1,500.
You are the chair of the Boston City Council's Committee on Education, and you're also the vice chairman of the Committee on Government Operations. So this is something that really is near and dear to you. It's something that you deal with every day. It's something that you kind of bury your nose in, so to speak.
Yeah, well, and the education component is so critical. And you are an amazing graduate of one of the best schools in the United States of America, Boston Latin, and Sumus Premium. Okay, cool.
Sumus Premium,
yeah.
woo! I always got to get that in there.
Yeah, and when it comes down to the Boston Latin School, 8th grade science was not taught at Boston Latin School until this year because they couldn't afford it. And so when we look at...
And we have a robust alumni.
Yes,
so,
right? But the issue should be that in the city of Boston, how we judge how great the city is doing, it shouldn't be by the General Electrics. It shouldn't be by the new companies that come in. It should be by what we do for our young people, by what we do for those who are elderly, by what we do for those who have homeless issues, and those who have opioid issues. So that should be, how do we help those folks who need the help versus only those folks in the private sector?
Let me take some of this, what you're saying, a step further. I've been talking to a lot of people, and you know, a lot of people are actually quite upset because they say, you know, I'm from here, and what do I have to show for it? I don't have a job that pays particularly well. You know, I'm hanging on by a fingernail. Yeah. You know, you have a lot of people. They're told that education is very important. Yeah. I was certainly always told that. Yeah. But then people like myself, we have an education. Okay, so then what do we do? Now what? Because we see people who don't have as much of an education, or they don't have experience, but they're getting jobs. And they're not necessarily from here. Now, that's another thing that people are upset about because, you know, obviously, I think people, they take pride. You know, Bostonians, we're proud people. And so we're very, very proud people. And so we take pride in the fact that people find this to be a desirable city in which to live. Yeah. But I think the problem comes from people saying that, well, we want this city to represent a place of opportunity for others, but it should also be a place of opportunity for us.
And it should be a place of opportunity for all. So what we currently are building right now is we're building San Francisco. Right. And what we're looking at in terms of the policies is a city where it will be rich, poor, no working or middle class if we continue on. The Olympics was a huge distraction, but it was going to be $9 billion. At least that's what they told us. And I asked a bunch of times and they refused to show me a budget. So I actually had to subpoena the budget. They were really going to spend $12 billion of our money. That would have been $3 billion of money that would essentially have crippled the city. In addition, there was the offer of the IndyCar, which was, you know, millions of dollars of folks' money was sucked up into that until the Attorney General actually moved forward. We have this administration and Mayor Walsh have lost their way. If we are building a city where people who are from here can't live here, their children can't live here, then what are we building? And so one of the things that we need to pull back on and ensure that we build up Boston Public Schools. We need to ensure that we educate the 4,000 young people who are waiting to get into early education. In my administration, we would add kindergarten through 12th grade computer science classes.
Now so let's talk about that. Let's kind of pull back a little bit because people hear you and they say, wow, you know, you're really getting into the minutia of the issues that we're faced with, and you're also talking about real solutions. And so really for people to understand, it's not just, I think, sufficient to tell people, well, you've been a public figure for quite some time, that you've been representing District 7 since March of 2011. I don't think it's sufficient to tell people that before that you were involved with Governor Patrick's administration, and you were involved with bringing jobs to the Commonwealth. You were involved with kind of saying, technology, hello, it's here, we need to embrace it. And interestingly, I did notice that Brianna Wu, who's very much, I've had her on the show, she's lovely.
She's amazing.
She's amazing, she is, she's very interesting. And I enjoyed our conversation immensely. I
support her, by the way.
I know you do. We don't, necessarily agree on, a number of different points, but I find what she says on a number of issues nonetheless compelling. And like you, she sees technology as something that can benefit us all and that we need to embrace it.
Yeah.
And so that's very interesting.
So by the way, so we all are on the same page. There will be 1.4 million open jobs in computing by the year 2020. In the United States right now, there are only 400,000 people who are studying computing. So there's a million open job opportunity, a $500 billion, it represents a $500 billion opportunity. And the city of Boston and in our schools, we are not training young people at every level for those jobs. For every one person who can code, there are 17 open jobs right now. So it is critical that we give our young people what they need. It's
at
also,
least so they have just a basic level of literacy.
Literacy, but also we must invest in vocational education also. And so I have worked hand in hand with folks at Madison Park, but Mayor Walsh is cutting Madison Park by $455,000 this year.
Now that's troubling to me. That's troubling because I remember one of the reasons, in full disclosure, I did support Mayor Walsh. I supported him heavily in the last election. And one of the reasons why is because he spoke very strongly and very enthusiastically about vocational education. And that was something that resonated with me because I took one career path, but other members of my family, including my father worked with his hands. He was a member of a union, a proud member, and I'm proud to come from that background. Exactly. And so I want to see people go into different trades and learn different vocations. I think, like you said, I think that there's a lot of dignity to those jobs. They're jobs that are very critical to the functioning of of all our different communities. And also, it's a matter of, like you said, there are all these jobs being created, and a number of them do require the skills that are learned in these different trades, in these different vocational centers and schools. So for him to now make that cut, it's kind of like he said one thing when he was running, and now that he's in office, so.
I supported Mayor Walsh in 2013 also. And, I'm a grown-up. And so what I do is I listen to what you say, and then I check to see what you do. What we have seen is at Madison Park, it was a level 3 high support school. So at level 1 is the best schools in the state. Level 5 is a state takeover of a school. It used to be a level 3, and now it has fallen to a level 4. Those are our young people. We need to make sure that we invest in our young people, that we build partnerships with the private sector so they could walk in to jobs in that space. And it is absolutely critical that all of our schools are well-resourced. Art and music are not a given in elementary schools across the city of Boston. We need to put that back. We also need to ensure that our young people have the psychologists, the social workers, and the guidance counselors that they need. Wraparound services. Because if you don't have them, kids, by the way, being homeless is trauma. Seeing someone shot, seeing someone stabbed, dealing with the issues that are happening inside the neighborhoods and communities are critical. And so we must invest in education because understand it is $20,000 a year to educate a young person in the Boston public schools. It's $54,000 to incarcerate a person in Suffolk County. We must invest in our young people and in our schools and our physical buildings.
And our adults too.
And our adults.
Right. But just to get back to a point that I started, I want people to understand the reason why you're able to go into, the nitty-gritty, because you were actually, you have a degree from the University of New Hampshire.
Yes, I do.
You got a degree in history, and you were very active on campus. And so a lot of the, I'll say, social justice issues that you kind of took on, you continued to champion them while you were working with Governor Patrick. And then now, as a city councilor, you still continue to talk about these different issues, employment and self-sufficiency and entrepreneurship. And I also like the idea that you talk about pride. You talk a lot about pride. You talk about having pride in your community. And so, you know, we both, you know, were just critical of Mayor Walsh. And I don't want to be too critical of him, but it's just, it's something that I would expect him to respond to. But, you know, instead of, you know, maybe talking maybe things that we might be disappointed in, why don't we talk about, shift the focus of the conversation a little bit. And yeah, let's talk about pride. Let's talk about pride in the communities. And what does that mean to you? It's a two-part question. What does that mean to you? And what do you want it to mean to our youth?
So what it means for me is that the city of Boston needs to have a structure that uplifts everybody, and not only uplifts some folks who have the most, but it has mobility, that people can start, can work hard, their kids can go to school, and that they can move up and have an opportunity to live here, to buy a home here, and to participate civically in the city of Boston. It means also democratizing government. In my administration, we will dissolve the mayoral appointed school committee. And we will have an elected school committee that will listen to the voices of the people and actually be accountable to people. We will have a planning agency that actually listens to people and that's accountable to people.
The school committee, that's been a source of real contention, how people serve on it. And so, you know, I mean, we've talked about hybrid, and I know Councilor Baker at one point. Councilor Baker is someone whom I greatly like, greatly respect, admire. You know, at one point I know that he was talking about maybe, you know, can we maybe explore the idea of a hybrid, you know, where some people are elected and other people are appointed.
And that's the least that we could do, right?
Well, I think we do need to do something, though, because I go to meetings. People have seen me at meetings, but I don't think a lot of people go necessarily because they don't know about them.
Well, not only that, you're not going to continue to go spend your time, spend hours and hours, and not have your voice heard. 4,000 young people walked out because Mayor Walsh cut their schools, right? And they did that not because they didn't want to be in school, because they wanted to play hooky. They did it because their voice was not being heard. In my administration, it's not my, in a Jackson administration, what we're doing and we're going to do is we're bringing the people to City Hall with us. That is our objective. It is not going to be about cutting out the voices of the citizens, but also the young people. Young people should hear and see their voice, and folks who have given their lives to the city, like you, Rachel, should absolutely be present, accounted for, and at the table in government. That is what we should see in our government. And I'm proud. Boston's given me everything that I am. It's given me an amazing family, given me amazing opportunities, and I'm not spectacular in any way. I've just had amazing opportunities. Every person who is in the city of Boston should have those opportunities, and that should be that Boston that we can all stick our chest out on. That we know that our city government, exactly, that our city government has our back, and that we're standing up for everybody. And I would also say a Boston that does not harm the most vulnerable people. And what the Walsh administration did when they closed the Long Island Bridge is we shut off opportunities for homeless people and for folks who have addiction issues. And what we see in our neighborhoods at 93 and Mass Ave should be a reflection of who we are in the city of Boston.
And I don't live far from there, so what I see sometimes is quite troubling. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but let's go to our next break of tonight's very, I think, informative and thought-provoking show.
I always knew that I had a calling to serve people. I was adopted. My mom had a daycare for 25 years in this house. So there are hundreds of young people who she started on the right foot with education, love, and guidance. There was this mentality of grace, and I got to see what purpose and love for community look like. I'm doing the work of my father and my mom.
Tito's agenda. So please welcome us joining Tito Jackson, Councilor.
Thank you so much. I'm a Boston City Councilor, and I represent about 72,000 people. My district is from Back Bay to Roxbury, and there's a 33-year difference in life expectancy and 2 miles. 50% of families in Boston make $35,000 a year. 50% of the people. And there are neighborhoods that are experiencing huge uptick in violence. We're allowing people in our country to dismantle what our country is about. I am running for mayor of the city of Boston for all of the dreams of young people, for opportunities for kids like me who are adopted. I will ensure that our government is run with integrity, a city that promotes and protects people living with dignity, and that invests in education for all students. The city of Boston is a city of compassion, and we must work together if we are to succeed.
Hello, and welcome back to Bostonian Rap. So we're in this, in the middle of this great conversation here. We're talking about Boston, where we're going, and where do we think we need to go. We're discussing the current state of things, and there's so much to talk about. So again, Tito, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Tito, of course, is running to be the next mayor of Boston. He's currently the District 7 City Councilor. That is all of Roxbury, it's parts of Dorchester, parts of the South End, and it's also parts of Fenway. So a very diverse, vibrant, and ethnically, racially, and just socially rich area. So we've been talking a lot about people who are vulnerable, people who are frustrated, people who don't have a seat at the table. So I guess now it makes sense for me to ask you why you're running. Yeah. What do you think is at stake? Because, you have a pretty good position. You do enjoy a pretty high level of popularity. The things that you have been fighting for, the causes that you first took up when you were an undergraduate at the University of New Hampshire, you're getting a chance to really put together craft policy that will really kind of bring those issues to the forefront, address them in a meaningful way. Mm-hmm. Again, for viewers, Mr. Jackson, Councilor Jackson, he is the chairman of the Education Committee in the Boston City Council. He is the vice chairman of the Committee on Government Operations. He's also involved with the Boston City Council's initiatives regarding labor, entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So really, you get a chance to address a lot of these different issues that are just so dear to you that you've been talking about throughout this interview. So why not continue as a city council? Why are you running for mayor?
So I'm also, and I've loved being District 7 city councilor, and District 7 will always be in my heart. I am running though because the city of Boston has lost its way. The city of Boston is leaving District 7 and other districts around the city behind. The housing that is being built is displacing folks across
People
the city.
all shapes and sizes, colors.
From every neighborhood. From South Boston, where I just was.
Oh, South Boston, it's been brutal.
Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, East Boston, South End.
They've discovered East Boston.
Yes, discovered, right? All of those neighborhoods are being left behind. And we're not addressing the real issues of the need for housing that is affordable, how we deal with the rising cost of rent. We have a 30% increase in shootings in the city of Boston right now. This past weekend, we're looking at 16 shootings and incidents across the city. So, and we have some of the highest income inequality. All of those things lead me to step forward in a leadership role to become the next mayor.
So it's a confluence of factors that have kind of compelled you to throw your hat in the ring, because there's several of you there. Of course, the incumbent Marty Walsh is running for re-election. You have Robert Capucci, a retired police officer who's also on the Boston School Committee. You have Joseph Wiley, who's an activist, very well-known, outspoken on different social issues. So it's not an easy race to be in.
Well, so let me say this. So there's a couple pieces. One, we need to acknowledge Mayor Walsh won by just about 5,000 votes. This wasn't a blowout in 2013. In addition, he carried many neighborhoods that really trusted him, that really looked for him to come back and take care of them. And when we look at those neighborhoods across the city right now, including Southie and
South Boston for those outside Boston,
but many neighborhoods where you're seeing those huge increases in crime, and you're seeing people displaced out of their homes, they're being left behind. And what we now have is folks who are focusing on downtown. Only focusing on those who are doing well. Well, you know, the city of Boston isn't working out for everybody. And so it will be my job in a Jackson administration to ensure that we're bringing along everybody. In addition, we have an administration that has every year underfunded education. $140 million over the past 4 years, he's underfunded education. 100% of our future is in the hands of the young people in the city of Boston, and I will fully fund the Boston Public Schools and ensure that we have a bright future for our young people. And in addition, I will look at community economic development instead of just stroking checks to large companies like General Electric. We have small businesses, local businesses in our neighborhoods and communities that need to be invested in, and that's who I will focus on.
So it's for you. So earlier I said, you know, let's not just be critical of Walsh. And I don't think either one of us want to do that. We don't want to just, you know, engage in gratuitous criticisms, disparage them needlessly. So I know that's certainly my position. I do get the sense that it's your position as well. But so what you're saying is you're just saying what you feel is the case and haven't spoken to different people around the city.
I'm stating facts. The Olympics is a fact. Mayor Walsh signed on to the Boston 2024 Olympics and put the city of Boston in financial jeopardy. Mayor Walsh signed on to the IndyCar race. There are issues relative to individuals in the city of Boston who are federally indicted. I'm just stating facts. And so when it comes down to it, we have to do the work of the people in the city of Boston. And we are distracted right now. We are not doing the work of the people of the city of Boston, the ones who live here. So this is the thing. The people there, and I love folks who are moving in. It is our job, though, to ensure that we take care of those individuals who have been here, who
are from here, sure.
And we need housing for them. We need to make sure that their children have an opportunity to be educated. And the time is now. And by the way, I'm ready. I have done more municipal budgets than Mayor Walsh. I have a background in economic development at the state level. I have a background also in the private sector and worked at a startup. So I have the skill sets needed to move forward and to hit the ground running. I think he had a growth curve, but 3.5 years is too long of a growth curve.
Sure. So then let me ask some questions then, and I really do have to ask this. I need to play devil's advocate a little bit here. You know, people feel very, they feel like they've been left out, and they're very cynical, and I can understand because I I feel very cynical toward different political figures, politics in general. What would you say to people who are saying, you know, Tito, again, this is such a tough race, you know, and I said that earlier. So, you know, Tito, yeah, what Rachel's saying, it's true, it's a tough race. Are you just running because you want to get a position in the Walsh administration? Are you just running because you're trying to raise your profile, get a plum job somewhere? What would you say to that?
What I would say is I follow a martyr, but I'm not one.
Okay.
I am in this to win it. I have a vision for the city of Boston that includes everyone. And this should be about ideas. Okay. And it shouldn't be about people attaching themselves to something because of, quote unquote, who's going to win. But I would say I have a winning platform. I have a winning team that's going to include everybody in the city of Boston, and we're going to hit the ground running. And in January, when I'm sworn in, we will begin pulling the pieces together for City of Boston for all, not only some, dealing with the issues of housing affordability, dealing with the issues of how we have world-class education for every single young person, and not a lottery where there's winners and losers, and how we uplift neighborhoods and communities across the City of Boston. So this is a winning campaign. And no question, and understand, Mayor Walsh drew a great deal of support from my district. We were able to turn that out over 65%. Well, you know what? When it comes down to what's happened, we know that we will be able to pull a citywide collaboration to win in September as well as November.
Okay, so then let me ask you this: Do you think the city's ready for a black mayor? And do you think the city's ready for, color aside, Tito Jackson? Because you're a strong personality, you're a colorful personality. Are we ready for you?
We're absolutely ready, and we are ready for a city of Boston that takes care of all. We're ready for a city of Boston where a person of color can represent everybody in the city of Boston because we are dealing with the same realities in most of our neighborhoods. In addition, the city of Boston is definitely ready for me because Mayor Walsh continues to adopt my policies. Time after time after time.
How can we get in touch with your campaign if we would like to do so?
TitoJacksonForMayor.com is how you get in touch with my campaign. Come down to our office, 74 Warren Street, right across from the Dudley Library. And this is a campaign not about me. It's about how we are all Boston and how we uplift everyone in the city of Boston, not leaving people behind and dealing with the most vulnerable folks. Thank you for having me, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Tito.
Thank
you. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and I hope we've given you a lot of food for thought. Bye for now, and please do vote.